blessed be. Today is October 31st, and today is Samhain. It is the pagan New Year's Eve. It's the year starting over. It's celebrating the end of summer, harvest, and things like that. It's also considered the time of year where what's called like the veil is thin between the living and the dead. So it's less restrictive for spirits to come into our environment and walk amongst the living. So it's been a while since I've posted. I made it back from vacation just fine. It was a wonderful trip, a fabulous birthday, but things definitely changed at work while I was gone. That's part of the reason I took a little hiatus from posting, is because I'm still trying to recoup emotionally from what happened. So with my trip to Europe, a bunch of PTO, and then the next morning when I go to log into work, I work from home, which I love, and I start noticing some changes, like my weekly meeting that the boss facilitated had been replaced by someone else's meeting at that same time. And then another email came through asking if my boss had been let go, if this was true. And I'm like, huh? I start going through emails, trying to see if anybody sent me any messages that anything had changed. And throughout this morning, I hadn't received anything. But I'm catching on, like, I don't see my boss's little Teams light on, things like that, and I'm really getting concerned. So after about an hour of going through messages and things like that, I reach out to one of my peers, and I was like, did something happen while I was gone? And he was like, I'm going to give you a call. So he calls me to tell me that first Friday while I was gone on vacation, the company did their first round of mass layoffs. We had just gone through an acquisition, we were purchased by a new company, this and that, and that was the first wave of change. I was floored and really scared because now I've been at work for an hour. I haven't heard from anybody in my company other than now the person who I reached out to. And I have no idea what's going on with me. Am I going to be let go? This happened when I was on vacation. Am I waiting just another hour for the call from somebody to tell me I didn't make the cut? So after about almost 2 more hours, I finally get a call from somebody, kind of at the higher pay range, who explained what was going on. I did survive. I am still employed. But there were a multiple amount of people who had been let go, 2 of my teammates. And, again, this is restructuring as you go through an acquisition, different needs, different wants, things like that. And it was so uncomfortable. It was probably one of the worst ways to return to work after a vacation. So everything is just, I've definitely been in survival mode because the new boss, I hadn't been working, I've never met this guy before. And all the networking I had been doing, I had a good relationship with my boss and his boss's boss. I was trying to get in on meetings, to be a present face, to speak up and things like that. But that gentleman had been let go too. It was just nuts. So now, again, I'm reassessing where I'm at, who's doing what, who knows what I've been working on, creating best practices for our department, in the draft, in the CAD department, because we actually don't have any best practices. And that's been one of the main projects I've been working on at the company. So now that we're all reassigned to a new boss, I was like, okay, well, I'd better then be able to present what it is I do. Because this guy's got no idea. Because my project work itself was very specialized for one particular customer. And then now, of course, that influx of work has been completed. So the work now coming to me is pretty minimal because there's not a lot I know about this particular industry. I had been focusing on one customer, and again, it's repeat, not quite learning about these building systems. A bit of a handicap for me. So I have started to really get into documenting what have I been working on. So I've just started a list of everything from templates and fonts, the meeting I facilitate, making video recordings. We had decided we wanted to standardize how we want our fractions to stack when we do MText. And so I actually created like a little tutorial video on how to change your settings. So whenever you typed in a fraction, it would by default go to diagonal and put a space in and all these little things. So I'm just taking inventory of that, action macros and little things like that, which is actually what I'm going to do at my team meeting tomorrow, is present. Again, I've talked about this before at these meetings, but the action macros, what they are, how to kind of develop a thought process to create your own. I'm going to show them two that I have. They were very specialized. Again, I worked with one client. And so the action macros I made had to do with cleaning up the drawing. I've got one action macro that I make a copy of what I receive from the client, rename it to what I need it to be, and then I open them. And I want to see everything that's in the drawing, so my first action macro turns on all the layers, it unthaws all the layers, and unlocks all the layers, all in one, and does a zoom extent, all in one step. So it's literally just run the macro and everything comes on and zooms out. So I can see what I'm dealing with, because I don't like hidden data when I'm going to end up XREFing in drawings and things like that. There's a lot of unnecessary information that we always get, and I'm going to go through and clean it up. Again, if you've got a good CAD drawing that you've received, it's easy to grab your layers and control them that way, delete things and stuff, and I just try to make my file size small. The other action macro that I have is the process of what it does is it goes it zoom extents, it saves, it goes into overkill, which then asks for user input, which then I can select like the floor plan. Then the zoom extents, then it purges twice. It does a purge all and a purge, like some sort of an app purge. One of the little doohickeys I found on some sort of tutorial. It's just like an extra purging of even further hidden data. Then it runs an audit, automatically fixes them. And then what it does is it opens up the units dialog box. And the reason I have that in there is a lot of these drawings that came in from this particular customer, the units were frequently set to feet. And originally, before this action macro, we would have to, type in units and change it. And I would frequently forget. So I want, again, automate the process. So my thought process, what are these repeat steps? And then again, start mapping it out, some trial and error in there for how to actually make that work. And so now I have all these steps in one command. I love action macros. I still don't know anything about Lisp routines. I don't know code, computer writing, stuff like that. But I know there's so much power in them when it comes to, again, automation. Because what I really want is a Lisp routine that will allow me to renumber sequentially attributes in our blocks. So again, you've got device counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and sometimes they switch and things like that. So you've got to renumber. You've added one in, so then you've got to go back and then renumber the sequential ones. And I don't have that. So I'm still double clicking my attributes. It's driving me crazy because I know this thing exists because I've used it at other jobs, but it's been stuff that's been provided, nothing I've created. The guys I work with don't do Lisp routines either, so it's still on my wish list. Maybe one of these days, if I could figure out, what is good training to even learn what this is, because I'm not happy with what I'm finding online. But I also haven't been diving in that deep, so, we just work around it. It's not my strongest interest, so it's really hard to get a hyper focus on it. But like I said, within this time frame, I'm documenting all my stuff and finding out where I've got holes in what I've got documented. Because I've got all the steps written down for the action macro that saves, zooms, overkills. I had that all written out to realize what I did not have was anything about turning on all the layers. So that's what I've been focusing on, is actually doing those steps to write out what that process was. And this is definitely helping me learn better, again, how these things work. And the point of that is to make it easier to repeat and build on. Talking in the past with some of these guys, I'm really big on documenting what we do. I want to break down how we did one of our blocks and automated it, a dynamic block. And it's got an attribute, it rotates. We stuck a polyline out of it and linked it to a field. So we put the stretch and flip on that line so we can run it and get an estimate for wire length and stuff like that. Super cool, but I want to break it down what were all these steps, because it was a pretty in-depth process to get things to, make sure if you're rotating the block, your font stays upright and things like that. And there's little nuances to make sure that happens. And I realized I kind of get stuck. I know these processes, but sometimes I feel like I'm always going back. If I want to do it again, I have to go back and learn, because I don't make these all the time. Again, information's use it or lose it. So I want to use it more in depth and ingrain it better. So when it's time to develop another block, I've got a better understanding, more in depth, internal understanding of what does what. So excited to see how that goes. And yeah, tomorrow at my meeting, we're going to talk about action macros. I'm going to challenge these guys to think about their process, and if there's anything they feel they could, just even small. Always start small, and because you're changing the way you're thinking, which we don't do overnight. We don't just jump into the deep end of stuff. It's okay to stick your toe in and wade out and get a feel for the temperature of stuff. So I can't wait to see how this goes. and keeping up on all this documenting of things. Maybe make sure I get some portfolio pieces together. Because again, if I need to present to these guys the value of what I've been doing with the standardization, if they say it's still going to be a priority, but I'm not real sure what's going on. I'm in survival mode, keeping my head down, just trying to get my work done and get ready to present the value I offer. But all of this has also opened up a new thing to document. So realizing that I was going to document and present, what I've been doing, I realized what else I can do with this is I'm going to need it for my annual review. Because again, now I've got a new boss. This is not somebody who's familiar with what I've been doing. So the meeting I had the other week ago with my team, I did a whole presentation about annual reviews. And again, it's up to us to document and present at our annual reviews what we do. We should not be expecting our bosses to have a list to sit there and say, you did this, you did this, you did this, because they have that list, but it's probably the bad things you did. So you got to go in and be ready to highlight. If they do have bad things you did, acknowledge, talk about what you learned from it. And now with this annual review mindset, I'm actually keeping a little log of weekly accomplishments. And so it's just, kind of general, and I broke it into subjects like, it was things that I got done, training that I did, any meetings or correspondences that of value, and any problems, maybe a deadline missed, any conflict. I made that a section also, just in case. Again, now I'm going to look for patterns. And so if I throw some stuff in every week, maybe once a quarter, I could go back in and look for patterns. Patterns for successes, patterns for problems. And I want to be able to go into my review to talk about all of my successes. I'm not leaving anything behind, even if it's small and maybe seems kind of trivial. I want my credit for it. And the same thing if there's any problems that keep repeating. If there's a certain employee or customer or something like that who's constantly not giving information or something. I haven't even had that yet, so don't know what I'll do with that, but I like the fact that I've got it ready to throw some notes in, because if a problem occurs, I can't fix it unless I can communicate about it. So I definitely see the value in it being ready if I need it. Well, that's what I've been up to. So I'm glad to make this recording today. I get a lot of value out of this reflection. So I do this for me. I hope you enjoy it. And if you did, don't forget to hit subscribe. And until next time, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again.